Welcome to Complete BS, the official podcast of couch coaches everywhere. Not just football. It's every sport that ruins your parlay, wrecks your fantasy week, and still brings you back for more. Buzzer beaters, blown leads, and brackets and flames. Yeah, we're all over it. Unfiltered takes, armchair analysis, and enough bold opinions to fill a playbook. Hosted by Brian Schmuck, sports junkie, the Saban of stats, and your official voice of I could coach better than that. Let's go.
Couch Coach Nation, the regular season is over. Conference championship games are in the books. And while we're at the end of the season, I want to remind you that while seasons end, conversations don't. As the official podcast of Couch Coach Nation, join us at www.couchcoachnation.com. This is where discerning fans talk ball all year round. We use real names, real respect, and really knowledgeable fans. There's plenty of holes in the internet to crawl into if you're a football troll. But if you want good, honest conversation all year with legends of the game and a peek behind the curtain of some major programs, I invite you to join us at CouchCoachNation.com. Now let's take another trip on the coaching carousel. Penn State finally ended their saga looking for a replacement for James Franklin by hiring Matt Campbell. I think Matt Campbell's a good coach, but this search was a mess. You fired James Franklin, who in just over 11 seasons gave you 6 10-win seasons. For Campbell, he was 10 years at Iowa State and averaged 7-5. Maybe with a bigger brand and in the Big Ten, he attracts better players, but he's starting in a hole because of how this search was handled and their recruiting class. He's got a lot of work to do. Good coach, but you couldn't have done this a month and a half ago. Iowa State, they've got to replace Matt Campbell, and Jimmy Rogers is who they went to. 2 hours after Matt Campbell was confirmed that he was going to Penn State, Iowa State Athletic Director Jamie Pollard landed Rogers. That's how you do a coaching search. He had his guy, he got on him. Rogers was only at Washington State for a year. He went 6-6 with a tough schedule. Before that, he was 27-3 at FCS South Dakota State with 1 national championship. Seems like a good fit there. Memphis, they went with Charles Huff, a young coach who's risen through the ranks, was 32-20 in 4 years at Marshall, only 1 year at Southern Miss, and they went 7-5, but the previous coach was 1-10. So big turnaround in 1 year at Southern Miss for Huff. If you're successful at Memphis, history has shown that you can get a big payday in 3 to 4 years. Cal, they went with one of their own, Tosh, Lupoi. Good hire for Cal. He's an alum. He's been a good coach rising through the ranks. I think this is a really good fit. James Madison, they bring Sunbelt Billy Napier back into the Sunbelt. He was 40-12 in 4 years at Louisiana. JMU, they seem to kind of have a plug-and-play system going on, so we'll see if Napier can pick up where Bob Chesney and Kurt Signetti left off. UAB, they promoted Alex Mortenson, took the interim tag off. Seems like he's the only guy who wanted this job. We'll see how that works out for them. South Florida hired Brian Hartline. I like the move for USF. Take a big swing for the fences. He's a great recruiter, kind of an average offensive coordinator. I think he needs to bring in a play-calling offensive coordinator. This is really a boom or a bust kind of hire. North Texas, they hired Neal Brown. He went 35-16 at Troy, only 37-35 in his years at West Virginia. I think he'll do well again at the G5 level, but I would have liked to see North Texas go after one of their Texas Tech coordinators, either Mac Leftwich, the offensive coordinator, or Sheil Wood, the defensive coordinator. Kentucky, they went with Will Stein, excellent young coach from Oregon. He grew up in Kentucky. They could not have made a better hire. UCLA hires Bob Chesney. This is a solid coach. No ties out west. Everything he's done's been on the East Coast. He's won everywhere he's been. My question will be about the fit with this, and we'll see how it works out. And then you've got Ole Miss. They promoted their defensive coordinator, Pete Golding. This reminds me of when Jimbo Fisher left Florida State and they hired Willie Taggart because he wanted FSU, and FSU wanted to feel wanted. Ole Miss, I think, is going to be looking for another coach in a couple of years. AV, any thoughts on some of these coaching changes?
Yeah, some, kind of what to expect, but some of them are very interesting. So To me, Penn State firing a coach that's been there that long, that early in the season, and not seeming to have a plan on how to replace them, and they ended signing day with, I think, 2 commits. I mean, that was weird to me. They ended up getting a good coach in the end. We'll see how that plays out, but it's just odd to me that they let it play out this long. I think a sneaky good hire is Tosh Lupoi. He's been a SEC guy for a long time under Saban, Kirby, that crew. Out with Dan Lanning. He knows how to recruit. He knows how to run defense. It'll be interesting to see if he knows how to be a head coach, but I think that is a sneaky good hire, along with Hartline being a really good hire. That'll be fun to watch play out because he's a guy that people seem to like. Great recruiter. He's got a lot of connections, so I think he can hire good coordinators. We'll see. I think if he does really well, he'll be there a couple of years and get really paid because the guy can recruit. Those are the ones that jump out at me. I don't have any reservations with any of them outside of maybe the Ole Miss hire. We'll see how Pete Golding works out, but all the rest of them seem pretty solid. I am intrigued by the couple I mentioned, though.
Let's get to some games before we talk about the playoff rankings. The Big 12 championship game, Texas Tech 34, BYU 7. BYU took the opening drive down 14 plays, 90 yards, almost 7 minutes, and scored, and then they stopped playing. They only had one drive the rest of the game that went for more than 17 yards, which resulted in a missed field goal. The Texas Tech defense, they let up that early touchdown, and that was it. They got 2 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 picks. Nothing came easy for BYU, and they were stifled. Tech, they took care of business. People will look at this team and say, oh, well, they lost to Arizona State. Keep in mind, they lost that game without Baron Morton, their quarterback. This is a very dangerous team in the playoffs. The Oregon James Madison winner will have their hands full with the Red Raiders.
1,000% they will. I think Texas Tech is right up there with Indiana, Ohio State, and Georgia. I mean, obviously they're ranked in the top 4 of them, but I think as far as talent goes, they are really well put together as a team. That defense is fun to watch, man. And that was a difference in the game were the turnovers, and they create a lot of turnovers. They started to have 4 possessions that started in BYU territory. I mean, you win games that way. The line of scrimmage battle wasn't close. Ben Roberts was all over the place, and he's their second best linebacker. So that just goes to show you how deep they are, how good they are. Their offense can score, too. It'll be interesting to see where they go and how they match up, man.
The SEC championship game, Georgia 28, Alabama 7. This was utter domination by Georgia. They got payback for their loss earlier in the year to Alabama. These are 2 programs going in opposite directions. Stockton, we said we needed more out of him than what he had been giving. He was an efficient 20 of 26 for 156 yards, 3 touchdowns. Georgia ran for 141 yards and held the ball for 13 minutes more than Alabama. Georgia played really conservative. Once they got up by 21 points, I feel like this game could have been an even bigger margin. The Georgia defense, man, 3 sacks, 1 pick, but constant pressure on Ty Simpson. They held Alabama to -3 yards rushing. It was the first time in the history of the SEC championship game that a team was held scoreless in the first 3 quarters.
Yeah, man, if I'm Alabama, I have concerns about my team headed into the playoffs. And part of me is like, Ty Simpson seems to have gotten worse. He's just not as efficient as he was. He doesn't look comfortable. But I think if you look, it's the offensive line. He didn't have time. They can't run the ball. So then that becomes like the whole offense is stagnant. And they've not looked great in the last few games. 2-2 in their last 4 games. Offense hasn't looked good. Defense hasn't been dominant all year, but they're good enough to win when the offense scores some points. So very concerning effort for Alabama. I mean, they couldn't move the ball at all. And they got an touchdown late, but I don't know, man. If I'm Alabama, I'm wondering what's going on.
When we move to the night games, one of them, the Big 10 championship game, Indiana 13, Ohio State 10. I hoped this game would be good, and it delivered. I love offense, but this game was totally entertaining watching 2 really good defenses go to work. Indiana being able to outrush Ohio State 118-58 was pivotal. The Buckeyes D had been stingy all year versus the run, and the Hoosiers were able to average 3.5 yards per carry and pick up first down after first down. Ohio State, they were 4 for 12 on 3rd down. They had 2 long second half drives where they came up with no points. A 12-play 70-yard drive that they went turnover on downs, and then a 15-play 81-yard drive with a missed field goal. The Indiana front 7, they sacked Julian Sayin 5 times. Coming into this game, Ohio State had only given up 6 sacks sacks on the season. They had a great defensive game plan, and they kept saying moving around and really uncomfortable in the pocket.
Yeah, man. I think that was the story of the game was Indiana's defense. I mean, when I looked at the game, I knew that Ohio State's defense was going to be good. I thought Indiana's offense was going to be able to score points. It turned out to be a game where nobody could score points, but Indiana had 9 tackles for loss. Julian Zane couldn't get going. Bo Jackson couldn't get going. Really impressive, and I agree with you. It was a low-scoring game, but, man, you could cut the tension with a knife, and every play seemed like a big play. I like the Signetti or whoever's calling the plays for them. They kept throwing the ball deep. They didn't hit on their first couple, but that's the only way you can beat those teams that really dominate the front seven is hit them over the top. And you have to keep trying because it's a low percentage pass. And they did, and they finally started hitting them, and they won. The difference to me, though, in the game, I mean, obviously, like, this is a little bit obvious, but Ohio State gets inside the 10 twice and gets 0 points. You can't do that and win in a Big Ten championship game.
Absolutely. Well, game balls, we're going to give them out, and we could give game balls to the Texas Tech, Georgia, and Indiana defenses. All three were really stout over the weekend, but I'm going to go to the Sun Belt and give my game ball to James Madison running back Wayne Knight, 21 carries, 212 yards, 1 touchdown. He also caught 2 passes for 11 yards, taking James Madison to the college football playoffs. AV, how about a game ball?
Yeah, I'm going to give mine to Charlie Becker, as Gus Johnson called him all night, Charlie B from Nashville, Tennessee. I just talked about having to throw the ball over the top of those defenses, and he's the one that was catching those long passes. He had 126 yards on 6 catches, no touchdowns, but a lot of impact plays. Charlie Becker was one of the differences in the game.
Well, we're going to skip our normal I've got questions and just have some generalized I've got questions around the CFP rankings that came out. I've got no issues with 1 through 4. I think Georgia could have been 2 and Ohio State 3, but 2 and 3, it doesn't really matter. I've got no issues there. I think 5 through 7, those teams were right. I think Ole Miss's resume is better than Oregon, and I would have had them ahead, but that's splitting hairs. And we pretty much all knew that 11 and 12 are going to be Tulane and James Madison. So I think when you look at that top 4 and then that group of 5, 6, 7, 11 and 12, you got the bulk of the playoff that we pretty much all kind of agree on, and that leaves you 8, 9, 10. I've had Miami at 8 for a while, and I would have kept them there, slotting Notre Dame in at 9, and that would knock Alabama out. I understand the argument that Bama shouldn't be penalized for losing their conference championship game, but for me, it's part of their resume, and so too how they've played in the last month. They're 2 and 2. Back in 2023, the committee told us that they kept FSU out because of how they were playing down the stretch, and that's why they put Alabama in. Well, in 2025, the same doesn't hold true for Bama. They're in again, and they're the beneficiaries of the grace by the committee. AV, your thoughts on how the committee did things?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think they got it right, but I do have a problem with them. The problem is, how was Notre Dame ahead of Miami going into this week and then not ahead of Miami coming out of this week? The head-to-head, the record, all of that was the same. Miami should have got in over Notre Dame, so I'm not complaining about it, but just the process. How does Notre Dame jump Miami on a week where neither of them played and none of their schedule played? Like, that doesn't make sense. So it just adds confusion to the process. None of us understand how it works. I do think they got it right. In your case, you had Miami ahead of them the whole time, and they should have been there the whole time. But for some reason, Notre Dame was there the whole time, and now all of a sudden Notre Dame's not there. How did that happen? Right? So are they playing games for the process just to keep people engaged? It just strikes me as weird. I do think Miami's got a tough draw. Texas A&M, they could beat Texas A&M, but then the winner of that game gets Ohio State. But all in all, I think they did a good job. I was just confused at the process of the Miami and Notre Dame.
At the end of the day, I think it's obvious we need to put an end to conference championship games where the participants in these conference championship games, they don't even play everyone in the league. Move the season forward a full week. No more week 0. Make week 1 start August 22nd. Thanksgiving weekend, we should have the opening round of the playoffs. FCS has the model. They've got a 24-team bracket with 11 conference champions automatically in and 13 at large. The FBS has 10 leagues, so you could have 10 automatic and 14 at large. The top 16 are seeded and the top 8 get a bye. This could all be wrapped up by January 1st like it used to. The coaches are still with their teams before moving on to new jobs. Make the portal window in January and have that all settled. Move signing day back to February where it belongs and fix this college football calendar?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think you have to move it up. If you get rid of the conference championship games, that weekend just becomes play-in games or the first round of the playoffs for teams that don't have buys. To me, it's sad, though. Honestly, like Notre Dame didn't accept their bowl. Then you're going to get rid of conference championship games. It's just not the sport that we grew up liking and loving and all of that. But evolution happens. I get that. But to me, getting rid of conference championship games makes sense for the playoffs. And I think that that's the direction they should go. And great point on the FCS model. But it's also a little sad to see like bowl games are already going away. Conference championships are going to go away. But we'll have the playoff. Maybe that's better.
Well, this week we're going to have an extra episode for you on Wednesday. We've got a special Heisman episode with 2001 Heisman Trophy winner Eric Crouch. And we're back on Thursday talking about all the awards and with Navy great Keenan Reynolds. He's going to join us to talk about the Army-Navy game. Join us at www.couchcoachnation, and you can follow the Complete BS Pod on X and Instagram. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to Complete BS. Be sure to subscribe, share, and follow us online. And tell us what you think of this episode. Use hashtag CouchCoachNation, and let's keep the conversation going.